Okay, shall I make a start? Let's go. Good to see you all after the break. So we've just got actually 2 weeks in August, but I think this project, I'll make it a 3-week project, otherwise it's a little bit short. And then that gives us better balance with all the different projects. So this was, I think, one of the requests we had at the beginning of the year to do something on waves and sea. So I've chosen this as an image. So this was a photo I took when I was painting this painting. So when I went to Wales earlier in the year, so these were a couple of pictures I did in angle two, very quick pictures, and they were both done on very windy days. So there's quite a lot of sand flowing into them, quite a nice bit of texture in there. This one I had to scrape it off. But this one, I quite like this one. But I looked at my photos and actually, so this rock here is this one, I think. I think I was slightly further to the right. This photo I took from higher up and further back. So I've sort of zoomed in on a little area. And I quite like the idea of a little bit of a visual journey through there. Whereas this one, I quite liked it, but I felt like the rock kind of it sort of blocks your view a bit too much. So I'm going to go with this. And one thing I thought I would do is revise gridding images. So this might be useful for some people. So I'll do that, and then if I've got enough time, I'll do a little bit of underpainting. So I thought that with this painting, perhaps a little acrylics or oil, something like that. So with these photos, I'll put that down in a minute. Yeah, so I've got a couple of copies of this if anybody wants to use one of these. This one, I've just printed this one off on ordinary copier paper, so it's easier to fold. So they've all got the border, and most of my photos that you see, I will have gone on the computer and I'll crop them and maybe tweak them a little bit. So quite often the shape is slightly different to how it come out on camera. And I basically go for what I think is the strongest composition. I thought this worked quite nicely, a little bit wider. That's what I've gone for there. The sky wasn't very interesting, so it wasn't really worth including more sky. So once I've got that, I basically just get rid of the border. You could cut the border off if you wanted, or just fold it over. And I want to get a nice simple grid on here. The first thing to do is make sure that the shape you're painting is the same as the shape of your photo. And an easy way to do that is to sort of have like, if you've got a bit of board, you could go up to the corner of the board, or in this case, I've just tacked a bit of canvas onto there. And I've drawn 3 sides of the border, and got these straight edges, and if you go through the 2 corners, like so, you've got to be careful you keep everything aligned. And then just make a mark where that ends up, which is there. So that will be the same proportion. So basically anything on that diagonal, corner to corner, will have the same proportion. So it's a neat, nice, easy way. You haven't got to think about measuring it all and calculating it all. It's just a nice visual way to do that. So just need to square that off and make sure that it's the same. Just mark that. I've got a few of these bits of old Venetian blind that are useful as straight edges. That Alan gave me these years ago. So that's same shape now. The next stage is to create a grid. So again, you could get the rulers out and measure it. And you can measure all this up, work out what the proportions are, sort of calculate the difference between that size and that size. I tend to just make it as easy as I can for myself, and I just halve it and then I halve it again. So if I just fold it in half, or if you've got a nice photo and it's on photo paper and you don't want to fold the picture, just get a scrap bit of paper the same size and fold that. And then you can then transfer those over. So I usually mark it, where it's folded, I'll mark that, because it's hard to see the folds. So that's the halfway, and fold that in again. Just have to take your time, take a bit of care. It's hard to do standing up actually, let's just lift that like that. So I've got quarters that way. I can do maybe quarters again the other way. Let's do that. That's that way, and I can do the same again this way. So these are more like little rectangles. If you wanted more, you could fold it again to create maybe eight little squares that way. So that's a nice little easy way of creating a grid, and then you just mark in where the folds are. And you can then just rule over those, that's the easiest thing. So I will do that in a little while. So that's your grid on your image. Just leave that there for a minute. To get the grid on here, I usually use just a couple of bits of paper and do the folding on the bits of paper. So it's a nice, easy way of doing that. Sometimes you find that you can just do it all with measuring, but these are quite awkward sizes. This was 40 odd, I think, and this is about 28. So it'd be difficult to calculate. So again, I need a bit of paper the length of that, which comes to there. So that bit I don't need, I'll just cut that away. And this is the bit I'm going to do the folding on. That gives me quarters. And I'll just mark the folds again, just so I can see them. There. And transfer that over. Now with the grid, I wouldn't advise sort of doing anything really heavy on here. Something either paint or just like a light colour, or something like pastel pencil is quite nice that will rub out. So I've got the grid that way. Exactly the same for this way. So that's to there. Get rid of that and fold that again. So, gridding is a technique that artists have used really forever. So if you look at some of the old master drawings, they might have done a drawing, then they'll grid it up and then blow it up onto a canvas, and that'll be the basis for their compositions. So it's a good technique to use and to get used to using. And then I'm going to use a lighter colour because I don't want a really heavy line there with the graphite. Just use a bit of light pastel. That way, this way. Then good to go then. It's good to transfer your image. Sometimes it helps to just turn it all upside down, work upside down. There's a way of just seeing this as a series of shapes, a series of abstract shapes. So I just quite like that. It doesn't really matter too much where you start. You might want to, if you're right-handed, maybe start top left and work your way down. So there's nothing much in that square. So this one here starts about there. And drawing within a grid, it can get a little bit laborious. I find sometimes the best way is to just mark position. So I'm just following this edge here. And then that line, let's draw that in. So I'm looking at this bit, how far along that is, perhaps comes into about here. And then it's about to that depth. And ends pretty much on the halfway mark actually, so about there it ends. Kind of rock formation. And then this one, I've got to forget about that, so that's not part of it. And this bit comes in here. So it's just a matter of just taking your time, working your way across, and just getting everything kind of, you know, the big shapes in really. Is that okay? Is that useful or not? Yeah. I've always found, I don't use it all the time, every now and then, particularly if I'm working from a photograph or a drawing, I want to make it transfer it. If I'm working from life, you can't really use this, but can be very useful. And this is a relatively simple scene, but if you've got something really complicated, like with lots of different, maybe a multiple figure scene or, you know, or complicated street scene or something, it's a really good way of just breaking it down into manageable parts and getting everything to fit from here onto here. Lots of times, if you just started drawing, you'd end up either not enough space or too much space. So it's a good way of just sort of slowing it down and just working out where everything goes. Is that enough for today? Yeah. So what I do from there is underpaint it. Sort of gets Sorry? Any questions on that? You're all right. If anybody wants to have a go, there's bits of scrap paper, there's scissors. I've got a couple of these straight edges. So I've got all the equipment you might want to use. If you wanted to do it on one of the nicer photos, maybe just cut a scrap piece of paper and transfer it onto, I was going to say actually what you can do is get a plastic sheet, like some of these plastic sheets, and you can draw kind of grids over there. Although I haven't got the right pen, you need like a permanent marker to do that. So that's often how I tend to do it. And that way, once you've got everything roughed in, you can take the photo out and you've got the line all over the photo. So that's another way of working.